I set out to kind of bark at the security moon. That's what I set out to do. I set out to call out the terrible practices that exist in our industry that make other people not want to invite us to office parties, right? That gets us the reputation of the company that likes to say no, or the department that likes to say no. And I think I want to be the voice that other people wish they had, but can't do it for whatever reason. And maybe that's where the mental health comes in, to turn around and call bullshit on all of that stuff and on all those people. And more people are being turned on to the fact that fun is required, especially after COVID and stuff like that. Fun is required. People aren't engaged enough. And I keep telling people, if you want to get more people to pay awareness in the awareness side of things, you have to give awareness a personality.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the 401 Access Denied podcast. I'm Joseph Carson, Chief Security Scientist and Advisory CISO at Delinea, and I'm the host for today's episode. I'm really excited. This is something I've been waiting for a long time. This episode has been in the works for I've had the plans for quite some time, and I'm really excited to be joined by the most entertaining person in cybersecurity, Ian Murphy. So, Ian, over to you. Can you give us a bit of introduction about yourself, what you do, and what brings enjoyment to your life?
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for the lovely kind words. As a working class lad from Liverpool, I take praise very difficultly. So if I'm not effervescent in my thanks, that's just my upbringing. But bless you for saying those things. So what do I do? What do I find enjoyable? Things. I essentially do stupid videos on social media and for awareness campaigns that hopefully brings a little bit of fun back into cybersecurity, with the main aim of helping those of us not in cybersecurity increase our cyber savviness. So my thinking behind that is, if I can get people engaged in a 1, 2, 3, 4-minute video, instead of boring the living daylights out of them with presenters who shouldn't be let anywhere near another human being, to be quite honest, then I think I've done my job. I think I've got people engaged. And my whole raison d'etre really is to help the people like my dad or my wife or my son or my brother or my wider family who don't have a clue about cybersecurity and will never want to have a clue about cybersecurity. I just want to help them pause a little bit. I just want to help them pause. And even if that means picking the phone up to me and saying, Ian, you're in IT, what about this? I've done my job then. By the way, if people do watch this podcast and then pick the phone up to me, you're getting hung up on straight away. I'm just So I've been in cyber about 30 years. Kind of fell into it in the early 90s, as most people do, because I wasn't a good enough footballer. My dream was to be a footballer. Nobody wakes up and goes, "Oh, I want to be in cyber." It's like people waking up and saying, "Oh, I want to be a bass player." Nobody ever does it, right? So I kind of fell into cyber after a failed football career where I managed to play semi-professionally, but just not good enough to make that much of a living out of it. And the other reason is I once lost £1 million live on TV.
I remember that. Who wants to be a millionaire? Or no,
it was a deck show called Red or Black. That was back.
That's what it was. Yes, I remember that video. Watching
it was a simple choice, Red or Black, right? So you had to do a bunch of stupid games. Got to the end, live TV, 9 million viewers, Red or Black. I'm a Liverpool supporter. I chose Red, right? Of course I did. And it came up black, and it was that's a sobering experience to be the first person to have done that. But as I say, I've been in cyber 30 years. I've kind of done everything from working in government to working in with software vendors to working in consultancies to now running my own business and doing my own consultancy. And I've worked for myself for the past 16, 17 years because really nobody else will employ me. And I have a distaste for people in general. I don't like being around people in general, to be quite honest.
You like talking to people, though.
But I don't mean that in a nasty way. I mean that in the fact that I think I'm an introverted extrovert. So put me in a room full of people I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
To network. I'm a wallflower. I'm stood against the wall. I'm clutching my bottle of beer or whatever, thinking, is there anybody here who wants to talk to me about football, right? Because I don't do chit chat. I'm not very good at it. But put me in a room full of people, of friends, or give me a couple of beers and point me at a karaoke, and you can't get me off it. So, it's strange that I would, in later life, consider a career as a stand-up comedian, because it's the worst thing in the world for that type of feeling.
For that type of character, for that, yeah. It's always good to challenge yourself. So, and I actually did. We have somewhat similar backgrounds. Even for myself, I still trying to kick off my football career. Even today, it doesn't go so well. And even a few weeks ago, I got a good headbutt to the jaw.
Oh, wow.
And I'm so lucky for this podcast that I actually end up with a cracked tooth.
Oh, gosh.
And I just had the dentist. It was on Tuesday this week, so I finally got the tooth repaired. But yeah, I just can't stop playing football. I can't stop, having that wish that my football career would kick off, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's more for me it's that kind of getting away, just being physical, having a challenge that's outside of what we do. Because for me, I mean, we started our careers back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I always thought that when I started the career, there was a lot more opportunity to have fun. It was enjoyable. You had a laugh. I remember back in, even doing, I think it was Windows 95 training. I remember I used to work for the NHS, and it was actually the Northern Southeast Belfast Trust. And I remember going and training all the people who had these big typewriters on their desks, how to use Windows 95 and how to basically, do word processing. And it was, oh my goodness, the laughs I had. When I went into some people's desk and there was a can of, a drinks can sitting in a CD tray. The mouse was on the floor and they're whacking the mouse with their foot. Just the fun that you had. But for me, I think over the years, I think some of the it's got very serious. It's got very mainstream news, and it's got to a very, very scary place. Have you had the same feeling? Have you felt that we've gotten to the point where cybersecurity has become such a serious thing that it's not as fun anymore? Is that something that you've felt over the years?
It's the thing that drove me to do what I'm doing, to be quite honest. I've got a whole 15, 20-minute cyber routine around that type of stuff, and I think partly it's socially in the era that we're in now, where everybody's afraid of offending somebody, or you can't say no. Well, you can say whatever you like. There may be consequences for it, but you can actually say whatever you like. I think if you intentionally set out to offend people, there's something wrong with you, right? I think you're a kind of displeasurable character, or an unpleasant character, I meant to say. But if actually somebody takes offense at something you've said, there's nothing you can do about that, because they've had an emotional reaction to something you've said, and they're asking you to do something about their emotions, which is something we can't do. We can't control. We can barely control our own emotions without worrying about other people's. And there's a special kind of character as well who takes offense on other people's behalf. And I'm like, what's that all about? And they say, oh, you can't say that, or I was offended because you said that about that, and you're actually talking to the person who they're getting offense on behalf by, and you're like, what's your point? Do you just want somebody to talk to? I'll talk to you if you want, but if you come over and ask me to do something that I've got no control over, my response is going to be really, really short. It's going to be 2 words, and the second one will be off. So it's
CyberOff. Is that CyberOff?
That's the reason I called my company CyberOff. Nobody else gets it, right? That's the reason I called it. It's an insult to people. Now, I know that could limit business, right? But the idea was, I personally think, if you're not telling somebody to fuck off once a day, at least once in the IT industry, you're not paying enough attention, right? So instead of doing that and people getting upset, because people get upset if you swear at them. Not me, I don't particularly. I've had people in the crowd shouting obscenities at me and left, right, and centre. So it's not a problem for me. But that's why I thought of CyberOff, because the weird thing about cyber is everybody uses it now as a kind of mystique term. I work in cyber. It's a bit James Bondy. What people forget about cyber is that back in the early 90s, to cyber was a verb, and to cyber meant to have online relations with people. I cybered with them last night, which is essentially you knocking one out over a webcam, right? And that's the problem, that people are using a term that back in the day meant you were a wanker. So that's where we are in the industry, that we're going around proudly telling everybody we're in cyber, and I'm thinking in the back of my mind, you've just admitted to being a wanker. So that's where CyberOff comes from. It's like a tongue-in-cheek. So if anybody's talking bollocks about cyber, which people invariably do most of the time, invariably, then I can just shout at them CyberOff. And if they say, "What was that?" I'll just say, "Oh, I thought you asked me what my company name was." See, totally.
It's a good way of I love it. It actually reminds me when I went to university in the US. I'm Belfast born and bred, and our let's say native language is not the most pleasant.
Quite good.
And I went to university in the US, and people must have thought I was the most vulgar person ever. And I had to, people were like, what the hell, this person's like saying everything, F this and S this. And I was just like, okay. And it really, going that time in the US when I went to university, I slowly turned into Father Ted. So I literally turned into Father Ted. Everything I had to change, I actually literally changed all the words. It went to feck, and then it went to shite, and then it was sugar. And I just changed the word to something that wasn't as bad. And eventually, so that took some time for me to learn to just clean up my. Now when I go back to Belfast, people are like, "Where are you from? You're not from here. You don't talk like this."
Well, I get that when I go back to Liverpool as well, by the way. So I've been away over 28 years, and I've still got an accent. I know I've still got an accent. But when I go back home, it's not as strong as it used to be, So I still get that. I'm a southern softie when I go back to Liverpool now, So which is hilarious from my friends, But if nobody else takes anything from this podcast other than they gen up on Father Ted and the back catalogue on Craggy Island, our work is done here. Our work is done.
We want bring Father Ted back. It was so entertaining. So something. It was for me it was just kind of always because I was living away from home from at that time. Father Ted was on air. And even Dairy Girls as well. Dairy Girls is always refreshing. So for me, absolutely. For me, I think the message for security definitely needs to go simplified. And I think what we need to get in, for me, one of the things I've kind of got into passion in the past couple of years is to start bringing that fun back. Is to start bringing that simple message back. And I think what you're doing is great because for me, I think I've seen a lot in the past couple of years, a lot of burnout. I've seen even with my co-host who is unfortunately not here today, Chloe, she talks about burnout and PTSD, that, in this industry, it's sometimes ungrateful that you can go for, months basically working around the clock, incident after incident, cyber threat and attacks and just continuously. And one of the things that I enjoy is that every now and again, when I turn around and look at my feed and I see a video from you, and it's I just pause everything else and I just watch it end to end, because what you do in your message is you really take something that, that a lot of vendors make overly complex and really get it scary. Well, you bring it back down to reality. You make it much more, you're the translator for security challenges into everyday society, to what it really means for the impact and focusing on the impact. Is that something? How do we make that much more of? How do we get vendors to also go into that direction as well, and not to take themselves so seriously as well? Because I think vendors sometimes get into that very serious approach. How do we really kind of bring down those barriers?
Bravery. It comes down to bravery. I'm not saying I'm brave. I'm not saying that at all. But it comes down for a big vendor with a huge following and a social presence and stuff like that. It requires bravery to bring humor into the equation, right? You see it with Specsavers do it from time to time when a referee makes a bad decision and they come out with a tweet that says, should have come to us, or stuff like that. And I think that's genius type of marketing, right? Or Paddy Power, not that not that I endorse gambling and anything like that, but their approach to marketing is
Mhm.
kind of great. And I think the problem with security is for so many years we've sold on fear, uncertainty, and doubt,
Yeah.
and nobody's gone. So let's be honest, when we buy a
Mm.
security product or technology, we're buying an insurance premium, really, right? We don't want the
Yeah.
bad things to happen. It's a risk balance and all that type of good stuff.
Mhm.
But in a sense, we're buying asteroid insurance, right? We're
Yep.
hoping that none of the attacks happens to us. And we'll come out with scare stories and figures of,
Mhm.
within 6 months of having a breach, all SMEs go out of business and all that type of nonsense. So we
Mhm.
come out with spurious figures that aren't backed up by any 6 trillion is the amount that is lost to, and
Mhm.
all that type of, it's just like pick a figure out the air and go after it.
Mhm.
I think when you have to be real and authentic with people, and you then want to start injecting fun with it, it's
Mhm.
difficult to change that tack from where you've been for a very long time, right? It's
Yeah.
difficult to go. It's easy for me because that's me, that's my personality, and I get that. But
Mhm.
let's say it was a big firm, one of the big awareness firms, Know4 or Proofpoint or Cofense or CyberSafe
Mhm.
or any of those big guys, right?
Mhm.
It was any of those guys. I understand why they don't do it, and they don't do it because actually they they may have a lot of investment in customers who would think less of them for
Mhm.
that type of fun approach. And it's actually that, so when I've spoken to customers or potential clients in the past and they've gone not safe for work, despite the fact that my videos have had millions and millions of views on social media, hundreds of thousands of comments and likes and
Mhm.
shares and all that type of stuff, despite that fact of the engagement, they go, "Oh, I don't know if we would get behind that from a culture
Mhm.
point of view." And it's not because it's their culture. It's because the people making the decision as a CISO or in HR
Mhm.
are fearful of their own reputation if they're seen to back something that
Mhm.
may upset Karen or Dave in accounts. So they're
Uh,
happy to keep the rest of the company risk free from that type of
Mhm.
offense, but open the risk to more scams and more threats coming in
Mhm.
because of a couple of people in the organization. And that just seems screwy to me, right? It seems
Yeah.
screwy that, and because of the, I get that people may not like
Mhm.
swearing. I get that they may not like sexual innuendo. I get all of that. Don't watch it then.
Mhm.
Don't watch it. Put it out with a disclaimer that says this has adult content.
Mhm.
It's almost like Ricky Gervais says it, and he said it
Mhm.
really well on his recent tour. It's almost like somebody puts up an advert of guitar lessons, and you
Mhm.
take off the tab with the number up and phone them up and go, "I don't want any guitar lessons," and you're like raging at them for something that you don't want or you don't find.
Mhm.
Don't do it. Don't do that
Yeah.
stuff then. And I also advocate for vendors or,
Mhm.
or for organizations to have that layered approach. So I don't think I'm the one and only answer. I don't think the other big boys are the one
Mhm.
and only answer. We have a layered defense and everything else. Why don't
Mhm.
we have a layered approach in getting engagement and content and
Mhm.
awareness and fun
Yeah.
to people? Some people might like the more adult themes. Some people might like the stuff that Catherine and her team at
Mhm.
Cybermaniacs do, with the puppets, which is great.
Yeah.
There's a whole breadth of that spectrum. Don't tie your colours to one flag. And
Mhm.
I think that's where vendors as well do get it wrong because they're serving
Mhm.
themselves, they're serving their
Mhm.
shareholders. They want to make money and they
Yeah.
want to make profit and they want to potentially be bought at some point in the future. So they're
Yeah.
not then going to go into a collaboration with me or
And
with
and
Cybermania.
it might not also work on a global audience as well. So
Yeah,
you might want to, because for what the content you're creating, which I love it, is for me. I think it works great in UK and Ireland and probably parts of Europe. It
yeah,
may not kind of have the same in Asia. It
yeah,
might not have, it might work well in Australia as well.
yeah,
North America might be a little bit different. So
yeah.
it might mean that you might have to tailor different things for different regions,
I agree. I
rather than
agree.
having so.
You're right, which is why I brought the
Mm.
animations out. I brought the
Mhm.
animations out, which enables localization easier then, right? So instead of me on the screen with terrible dubbing, it's then just the animation with you could do the dubbing with an actor within that local language, and then you make the jokes relevant to that local language. So that's why that's why I did the animations. I also deliberately made the animations safe for work as well, so people don't have an excuse not to use them.
Yeah, you actually bring up important. One of the lessons I learned it's gone a long time ago. It was late 2000s, around 2008, 2009, I think it was. I was doing a risk assessment for a large, transportation company, and we were going down the path. I think I've mentioned this before on the podcast. We were basically doing. It was a consultant had went and did a risk assessment, and we were going in and we were reviewing that risk assessment and making then recommendations of what they can do to minimize the risk. And what we realized was that they were in silos. They had patch management doing over here. They were doing vulnerability assessments here. They were doing asset inventory here. They were doing, it was all silos and nothing was correlated. So they had no good visibility about, the overall state of security. They had it in individual. They knew how many machines had been patched, but out of those machines that had been patched, they didn't know which ones may have not had the last vulnerability scan run. Or whether the content that the person was looking at was safe. So at the time, we went and made recommendations. Our recommendations were kind of disaster. We were going down the hammer, the enforcement of security, and making employees feel uncomfortable. We were preventing them from being able to do their work because it was taking them longer to do things. They had to think, pause and performance and stuff. So one of the things, it was actually ironically one of the days we were in having the room in the company location, that the same day there was a bunch of kids it was like a bring your kid to school day or something like that, that they brought their kids in. And we were running, it was actually 6 months into the project, and we were running into, it was no success. And we needed to find quick alternatives. So one of the people in the team said, we might as well ask the kids. And we thought, it's an interesting idea. We haven't tried that. Let's try it. So we actually went and we asked, can we get the kids in a room? We want to test our approach to see if there's anything we can do differently. And at the point was that we were saying, one of the questions to the kids was, we're trying to communicate. We're sending emails to all employees. We're giving them this awareness training and policies and things they shouldn't do. And the kids were like, why don't you try it in like a comic style? Because text doesn't mean anything to us. If you see an image, that's more impactful. We thought, that was interesting. So what we ended up doing was we took those policy-based emails about awareness, about plugging in USB sticks and clicking on links, and we turned them into cartoons. We turned them into images, little basically images. And to your point, when we did that, it actually made translation much easier, because then you only need to change the certain text in different boxes, and it actually meant translation was much more easier globally, that you could actually translate it for different regions, different locations. And the best thing was I always remember the funny comment afterwards. It was one of the kids. We were like, how do you think we should make this available? Do we put it in everyone's desks? Do we make it how do we send this out? Do we use email to send it out? And one of the kids put their hand up and said, why did you put it in the back of the bathroom doors? Because every day someone needs to take a crap. We're like, that's actually a very smart thing. It was 2 minutes of uninterrupted time of IT security policy on the back of the bathroom doors. And it was, for me, you're absolutely right. I think how you've evolved your message going, into that same path definitely shows that we do need to bring a lot more of that, images and I think what also your message really gets down to is the impact. Is also what is the impact of people? Because I think that's also that same project that I worked on. We were looking who's the best people to be our communicators and go-to people within the business units. And ultimately, resulted in is that the best people to talk to was the victims, people who knew what it was like, who had been victims before. And they were the best people to portray the message. And they became cyber mentors or cyber ambassadors, whatever kind of different names different companies have for it. But it was a great way to, I've seen that evolution. And to what you're doing today, I think really kind of has carried that on to a whole new delivery message, delivery mechanism. So I think it's absolutely great. What can you share with the audience? What does it take to create those videos? Because I think you probably have a lot of fun in the background creating them. I think it's with your green screen and your costumes definitely does. Do you have a costume shop that you go to that you do?
Oh, no, we've got quite an extensive range of them now. Mostly about the wigs. People comment on the wigs mostly, So I'm sure they think this is a wig as well. But from a creative point of view, I think the important thing is to surround yourself with smarter and more creative people than you. Because everybody thinks they're funny, right? Everybody thinks they've got a creative gene. Everybody thinks they can sing on karaoke or whatever. And the reality is somewhat different from that, right? If I could count on or if I had £1 for everybody who'd said to me since they found out I've done stand-up comedy, here's one for you, I'd have at least 17 quid at the moment, So it really is. Everybody thinks, and most of them, by the way, would get Bernard Manning cancelled off TV, by the way. And I'm like, I'm not going to tell that, and it's not funny, No, it is. It's funny. No, I'm not telling it. So I think, from that creative process, it's about getting in a room, kicking ideas about, or getting over email, kicking ideas about, what about this, what about that, and then scripts being formulated. What about, we can't say that, what about saying this, what about, and just getting to the fun, So sometimes I'll come up with the idea and send it to my guys. Sometimes they'll just come up with a completed script and I'll go, that's it, that's genius. Or sometimes I'll say, we can't say that, that's technically incorrect to say that, or those bits and pieces. But I think for them, their goal is to strip any remnants of dignity away that I may have had. So that's the guiding principle. And I'm sure they want to make me. I'm sure they want to get me to a point where I just lose it, become a diva, and walk off set.
That's permanently. That becomes the permanent character.
Yeah, the driving. I've been close once. It was the Cyber Girls video I did, and it was different dresses, right? And there was one that was
the alternative to the Spice Girls one. I remember that one.
Yeah. Most people are still having therapy for it now. But it was one of the dresses for Victoria was so tight and so clingy. I just felt really exposed in it, right? I just felt really exposed. If I was blessed in certain parts of the department more than I am, I mightn't have had a problem, right? But I was like, I can't do this. It's really and they talked me around and they did it. It's one of my best videos actually to do. But I think for me, and I hope it comes across in the videos, we just have so much fun doing it, right?
Yeah.
And we have loads of bloopers that we generally don't put out, and every now and again we'll put out. But it's just so much fun in doing it, and a lot of it is my background, is my upbringing from Liverpool, is my working class upbringing, and watching the likes of Tommy Cooper and Morecambe and Wise and Cannon and Ball and all of those guys, and then Billy Connolly, who's
Billy Connolly is one of my favorite. He's one of my all-time. I was fortunate enough to get to see him live in Belfast many years ago. And just watching him talking about one thing, and then he segues off into so many other jokes, and eventually he's like, "Oh, what was I was originally talking about?" And he finally winds himself back to the original. And it was, that's for me definitely I enjoy good comedy. I enjoy a good laugh.
Yeah.
And I just feel that in the industry, I would love to see more of it coming back. I remember just in my early days of career, I remember every day in work, I couldn't stop laughing. And I've been fortunate enough to be in companies over my career where that's continued, that you surround yourself. And sometimes it might not be the company culture, but it might be your team's culture, that you can still have that, that good laugh and enjoyable. I remember there was one person on my team that always kept me entertained. I used to be responsible for a large support team, and when you work in support, you get a lot of really kind of intense calls. People's angry, people's upset, and this one person always reminded me, he was like the most kind of calmest person when those types of calls come in, and he would always turn it into something entertaining. He would always be able to turn it around, and the person on the phone would end up laughing. Especially in those very tense moments. And I think we definitely need, people that are really good at being able to do that in the industry. And I definitely think, I've worked in a lot of incident response where I believe that we need to surround ourselves with people that can actually make sure that we can actually, recover from those intense moments to get us out. Because I think comedy and entertainment is what helps us get back on track again. It was helps put people back in path. And unfortunately, I've seen a lot of, unfortunately, people leaving the industry because of burnout and other things. And I think that, entertainment and comedy is a good form of therapy. It's a good form of kind of, keeping people just connected and communicating. So for me, it's such an important area. Um, and so for when you're producing them, how long does it roughly take? I mean, these for me, I produce a lot of content.
Yeah.
And when I see some of the stuff you're doing, I'm like, it must take weeks to do the editing, the kind of the scripts, the content, ordering the costumes, trying the costumes on. It must take how long does it roughly take to create the content?
I think for a bespoke animated video for somebody, for instance, it'll be a 5-week process, right? It'll be from initial idea, coming up with those, pitching those, storyboarding them, writing a script, getting the sign off on the script and the ideas, doing a first rough draft, getting them to sign off on that, and then doing the final edit and stuff like that. That's like a 5-week process. On the live video, that's a little bit shorter because the animation just does take longer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably two weeks on the live one if we can
Okay.
agree the content and the script and things like that. On the videos for what I put out on LinkedIn, which is twofold really. It's to raise my profile and obviously entertain and educate. But hopefully, as the raising of the profile, people will come in and say, "Oh, I like what you do. I like the animation stuff. Can we
Mm-hmm.
get involved in this, and this?"
Yeah.
Which would be great. But we've got the video stuff down to a fine art now. We kind of
Mm-hmm.
know where we are in terms of script. What we've
Mm-hmm.
started doing recently, we started filming in different angles, which is, and it's going to sound boring, but it adds more depth to what you see for the final, rather than just a straight
Oh,
on.
there's just a straight. You have the side, and okay. Yeah.
You're actually filming the scene 3 or 4 different angles 3 or 4 times. It
Mm-hmm.
takes a little bit longer, so it's taking a little bit longer now because of that. But the output, I think, is much better. One of the best backhanded compliments I ever
Mm-hmm.
got was somebody who turned around and said, "I don't think I'm interested in that. They're poorly produced." And I'm like, "Do you know how long it takes to make them
It's
look poorly produced?" You know,
that's the skill.
yeah,
That's actually that's a lot of the ingredients goes into making it that way.
almost a bit like Acorn Antiques from Victoria Wood, with the set with shape behind and all that type of. So it's almost
Mm,
all of that comes into the
mm,
mix, and I think people who don't get that don't then get the sense of
mm.
humor, and are probably not in my target market anyway.
Yeah.
And they're a wonderful tool to qualify people in or out straight away.
Mhm,
Because actually they'll either go, yeah, that's not for me, or love what you do. How can we get involved? So it's but as we and it's still in its
mhm.
infancy, really. The company is just over a year old.
Is that
And
it
even though,
feels like much longer.
yeah,
I for some reason, to be honest, that it feels like years already. It feels like we're on season 5.
I know, but I think because initially, going back 3 or 4 years, I started to make more of an effort with LinkedIn and to
Mm,
start using my profile. And I was VP of a different company then and doing bits and pieces and helping them as a startup. So I thought I'd raise the profile, help raise the
mhm,
profile of the company, blah, blah, blah. And out of that came CyberOff. So out of doing that stuff came the
mhm,
idea for CyberOff. So without that stuff to begin with, it wouldn't have evolved into CyberOff. And really, as a kind of going business concern and a formulated
mhm,
limited company and all that type of stuff, it's about 18 months old or something like that, in
yeah,
truth. And then, now it's about raising the profile, getting more customers in, and more people are being turned on to the fact that fun is required, especially after COVID and stuff like that. Fun is required. People aren't engaged enough. And I keep telling people, if you want to get more people to pay awareness in the awareness side of things, you have to give awareness a personality. And most of the
mhm,
time now, it just does not have the right personality. You know, it has the personality of mandating training on people.
Enforcing, pushing, not really kind of getting it to the same level of enjoyable,
Yeah,
so
exactly that, and almost trying to trick them with phishing tests. You know,
yeah.
I get the value. People say, "Oh, your phishing tests work," and so I get the value of the thought of
Mhm,
phishing tests, right? I get the idea if we show them what a bad phishing approach is, then they'll learn from that. And I always say to them,
mhm.
but when you were taught by your parents about not putting your hand on the hot stove or in the fire, did they take
Yes.
the tip of your finger and stick it in the fire or stick it on the hot stove?
Did they, did
Throw
they
your
throw your hand in it? Yeah.
exactly that. And then people say, "Well, it's like a fire alarm." No, it isn't. It isn't like a fire alarm. We do fire alarms because health and safety regulations say we
Mhm,
have to do it, and it's in law. It's legal. We do phishing tests because the vendors have spent a lot of money in marketing that this stuff
mhm.
works, and it gives us a tick in a compliance box. It does
Yeah,
not make anybody any better at spotting phishing attacks or making them fall foul of phishing attacks. We
yeah.
will all fall foul of phishing attacks, and I think that's the bit we have to realize.
It's the impact. It's what happens after.
Exactly.
Because if you're telling, I always the message to tell people not to click and stuff is telling them not to do their job, and that's counterproductive. It doesn't. The internet's great to click on. The the button in the mouse is to click on things.
Yep.
The browsers are to click on things, and ultimately your job is spent probably most of the day is clicking on things. And to
Yep.
tell people not to click, these are the bad things, don't click on, these are good things. What we have to do is become, much more is what's the result of the clicking in it, and how
Yep.
do we minimize that? How do we
Correct.
make sure? And there's also a big gap as well that a lot of people don't realize what security is in place, what they're protected against, what they're not protected against as well. So transparency between the security controls and the people is also needs to be better communicated as well.
I agree.
I loved one of the things that I think what we had to do, me, you, and Jake, and a few of the others, and Dan, is we have to get together and we have to do the next version of this is the cybersecurity is a reality TV show. I think that's the next one, the next step. And I always laughed at when the European Bloggers Award when Jake said, what was it
The Love
the
Island.
influencer award, the Love Island one. I laughed at that so hard. So maybe the next version is a security reality TV show. It's the next phase of this.
Maybe
Um,
a version of the Kardashians or something.
the Kardashians, yeah, clicking on things and seeing bad things happen.
I'm working on a Kardashians video, so be warned.
If you're taking requests, I would love to see a Father Ted and a Mrs. Brown.
Oh, so I mean, Father Ted would just be amazing. I could do Father Jack right now. You know, it's just maybe a version of kicking Bishop Brennan up the arse. Maybe we'll do a version of that episode.
That would be brilliant. So I definitely, if at some point when I'm in coming over, maybe I can also, make a guest appearance as well.
Awesome.
But I'm not up for the singing part. I don't know about
Neither am I. Yeah, my voice.
you, you do, but when you got the music going, you can put a tune. you can make it go. So there's, but
It's
definitely.
weird, because I keep saying to them,
Mhm.
let's do a Frank Sinatra or a Dean Martin one because I'm okay at
Yeah.
crooning. Right? Most people are okay at crooning. Let's do that. And they're like, no, they're going to pick like the communards or stuff like that. It's something I could just never do in a million years.
It's always brilliant. So you won an award recently.
Uh,
So, can you share a little bit about the award itself and what does it mean for you? And because I've seen you in Dickie Bows and dressed up, giving awards.
yeah.
So which is also great to see and entertaining. But I think it's fantastic to see you receiving an award. So you share a little bit about what happened.
So it was the European Vlogger of the Year thing, and it was for my Cyber Girls video as well, which is amazing. I think I've scarred enough people that they voted for me on the proviso that I'd never do anything like that again. Um,
Mhm.
but I think what's nice for me for awards is other people find it useful, and other
Mhm.
people find it useful enough to vote for, which is kind of cool. Um,
Mhm.
I think the awards I like it, and when I was a player, the awards that
Mhm.
I put more stock in was the supporters award of the year or the
Mhm.
players player award of the year, because it's voted for by your peers or the people who are
Yeah.
watching you. And those are the things that meant more to me than, say, the managers one or the chairman's one or stuff like
Mhm.
that. They never really meant too much to me. So to be voted by others is awesome. I think it's something that we can get carried away in, to be quite
Mhm.
honest. We haven't split an atom here. It's not a Nobel Peace Prize. It's a bit of wood with plastic on it. So,
Well, to be honest, I mean, I would say, as I mentioned earlier, what you're doing is important to help with mental health and the stress and burnout in the industry. And for me, it is, you have probably helped a lot of people that, woke up one day and didn't feel good. And you give them, a couple of minutes of entertainment and change their outlook for the day. So, I strongly believe that that's, for me, we need a good way to tackle the
mm,
burnout and mental health in the industry.
yeah, yeah.
And what you're doing is definitely having that impact. So for me, that's what for when I looked at, giving the award to you, that's what it meant for me. Was the how you're helping people in the community.
Well, that's very kind and humbling to be quite honest. I think that's a nice
Mm,
byproduct. I think I could turn around and go, oh well, that's what I set out to do, but I didn't really.
mm,
I set out to make a bit of cash and buy a place in Barbados. To be quite honest with you, yacht, but no, I didn't. I didn't. So, but no, I think I set out
mm,
to kind of bark at the security moon. That's what I set out to
mhm,
do. I set out to call out the terrible practices that exist in our industry that
mhm,
make other people not want to invite us to office parties, right? That gets us the reputation of the company that likes to say
mhm,
no, or the department that likes to say no. That where people think we are arrogant, we do operate with hindsight, and we do talk down to people, and we're
mhm,
quite condescending, almost like you're going into an episode of the IT crowd where you can't
mm,
enter into mission
yeah.
control for fear of being savaged. I wanted to change all of that and change
Mhm,
that perception, and hopefully I've done a little bit of that. And also as well, I kind of want to change some of the FUD that gets out there from
mhm,
vendors who should know better and are still spunking VC money up against the wall from a marketing point of view and
mhm,
not earning a profit, but are considered industry leaders in their field. What's that all
yeah.
about? What is that all about? Because that's just a self-fulfilling prophecy that those guys
Mhm,
are up with to say we're, market leading this, world leading that.
mm,
It's like, that's just marketing bullshit. And I think I want to be the voice that other people wish they had, but can't do
mhm,
it for whatever reason. And maybe that's where the mental health comes in, to turn around and call bullshit on all that stuff and on all
yeah.
those people.
No,
So,
I think that's an important message, and it's one of the things, even when I do go to events, walking around and looking at the messages and trying to see, what is real value. What is the things that's really changing, the society for the good. What definitely makes an impact. And I think that's the message I would like to see the industry start to focus on,
mm,
is the message of, how are we helping people do their job better?
mm,
How are we helping society? And I love Miko's recent, he tweeted out recently, and I mentioned this in the previous episode, was around we're no longer protecting computer systems, we're protecting, society.
yeah,
And that's what it's extended to. And we have to realize that, at the end of the day, it's about people.
yeah,
It's about, helping people's lives be better, their lives basically, be much more fulfilling.
yeah.
And we are an important part of making that happen. So absolutely.
I agree. And, I've heard people say cyber's a people problem, but they do it in a negative way. Cyber is a people issue, but I also think the people are our best hope for the future, almost like a Star Wars, a New Hope, and stuff like that. But I don't mean from
Mhm.
the point of view of trying to build human technology on the back of it, or use terrible terms like human firewalls and things like that, because
Yeah.
because no, change firewall for shield, because that's where that term comes from,
Yeah.
human shield, and look at what a human shield is. See if that still
Mhm.
resonates when you realize the derivation of where that comes from. Again, it's marketing bullshit. I think we
Yeah.
need to show more compassion and more empathy, and we need to be
Yeah.
able to connect with people more. And I think that's what the videos are meant to do, to connect to people more. So when people see me at events or whatever, they'll go, all right, Murph. And I've had that recently, and it's a weird thing, right? It's a weird thing. And I'm ultimately humbled, and thank you very much for those people who do that. And more people come up and talk to me, by the way. It's no problem. As long as you're buying beer or coffee, we're all good. Um, but it's almost that where you think actually you've said something or done something enough to touch somebody that they feel they know you, that they can come up and use your nickname, and I'm like, that's cool, that's brilliant. I'm happy then, you know. It's
Yeah.
just I've even had it
I
when I've
think,
been out having dinner, you know, and somebody's gone,
yeah.
are you Ian Murphy? And I always pause and think, do I owe you money? Have I?
Yeah.
I
What are you
you know,
after? What do you want?
thinking, no, no, that's my brother.
It's a very Belfast thing to do. That's a, if anyone talks about zero trust, I will say, it came out of Belfast. You just don't trust anybody. So
Yes,
it was all about, if you wanted to know the origin, it wasn't Forrester, it was Belfast society. So
absolutely.
anyone asks you, what's your name? Mickey Mouse is typically the common response. So, but for you, what's next? What's your next plans? What's any I would love to see this turn into a Netflix series. That would be my
Yeah,
wish. But because I think it's great for social, but I really think that we need to take this to global, to mainstream. It needs to go. It needs to get broad. I'd love it to see
yeah.
it go further.
I want to make CyberOff the headspace of cyber. So what Headspace did for meditation and mindfulness,
Hmm.
I want us within CyberOff to build a community to do a similar thing for cyber, to raise the awareness of it,
Hmm.
to help people improve their savvy. I'm redoing the website. I've got an app built and all that type of stuff. So I want to build
Hmm.
a cyber community around the funny content, but I don't want it to do it in a boring LMS type point of view. I want to do it in like an iTunes approach where you're creating playlists for friends and families to go and watch that stuff, and other people can create playlists, and then other people can put their own content in and stuff like that. So that's kind of what in the back of my mind, the grandiose plans. The more immediate stuff is I'm off to the Fringe next week to see a couple of friends of mine who are performing. I'm probably going to perform there next year, so I was a little bit too late getting involved this year. So I'll probably perform there next year for a couple of weeks, something like that. That's in the
And the
works.
Fringe, that's the comedy show in Edinburgh, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah, the Fringe Festival. It runs for the
yeah.
month of August. So I may try and do a couple of weeks. My other plans are to do more stand up. I've got
Hmm.
several corporate gigs kind of in the
Hmm.
works for people who want me to present a different view of awareness. I've just come back
Hmm.
from Budapest of doing one for a corporate over there where I kind of mix an awareness presentation with
Hmm.
stand up to almost do a Connolly-esque meandering of around
Hmm.
awareness to get back to a point that I didn't know I was going to make in the first place. Because I love Billy's point of not writing stuff down, trying to do it from experiences, and trying
Yeah.
to be like your funny friend down the pub who can tell those stories, right? So,
Oh, that's
so
my childhood. My childhood. I was a barman for many years, and that's that's.
exactly that. You know, people who can capture and hold an audience in their hand, 10 or 15 people around them in the pub whilst they're telling a story. You know, that's
Yeah.
I've known loads of them in my life, and they're just funny people. So to do
Hmm.
a bit more of that, do a bit more corporate gigs. Awareness Month's coming up. I was just thinking about
Hmm.
Awareness Month, what I'll probably do on LinkedIn and other socials. I've
Hmm.
got about, I don't know, 60, 70 videos now. I'll
Hmm.
probably World Awareness Month with maybe 3 videos a day, just to give
Hmm.
people a view of what's gone on in the past. And,
Because
you know,
you're trying to get my productivity less,
yeah,
but my mental health increased.
yeah, exactly that.
So,
And then actually, I've just released an early adopter program for CyberOff where I think to get more organizations involved, you've got to give them a say in what's coming out from a topic point of view. So the idea of the early
yeah.
adopter is a monthly subscription service to a new animation that isn't released on socials anywhere. So it's just
Hmm.
purely for the paying early adopters, where they then get to vote on the topic that we develop the animation about, and we may give them
Fantastic.
three ideas of animation, so they get to vote on that. So then that might be passwords in an Indiana Jones style type of thing, So or vulnerability scanning in a James
Yeah.
Bond style or stuff like that. So we'd do that for the early adopters. So I've got seven, much to my surprise, because I thought my niche would be kind of SMEs and stuff like that. I've got several large organizations who want to take me up on that. I mean, large organizations as
I
well.
mean, I definitely think there's a place for this in large organizations for
Yeah,
sure. It might have to be, tailored for, depending, as I mentioned,
yeah,
geographical locations. It might have to be tailored for certain elements in the organization. But definitely, I think we need to stop taking sometimes everything too serious,
yeah,
and we need to sometimes make fun of ourselves a little bit, and enjoy, and get the
agree.
balance back, where
I agree.
it's all about entertaining. So
Yeah,
I think that's where the future of cybersecurity should be. Is about
yeah.
making it enjoyable, a place that
I,
we all feel included and inclusive and entertained.
indeed, and I think anybody who may watch my stuff or see my stand up
Mhm.
or whatever, and think, oh well, he may be offensive at those bits and pieces. Please rest assured that I don't care what your opinion is, right? Please rest assured that your opinion is your opinion. It makes no odds to me. But I never go out and I never set out to offend
That's,
people. Never
no,
ever
that's
do I set out to offend people.
Yeah.
So it's
No, that's absolutely. I think it's always important, and that's a cultural thing. That's I was brought up the same way. Is that you're there to look at a specific kind of topic, but it's
yeah.
not to offend anyone. It's at the end of the
Well,
day is the usually the biggest people we offend is ourselves. So
exactly that. So that's why I'm the butt of all my jokes. And you'll know, growing up in Northern Ireland, right? If you offended somebody, you were likely to get a smack in the face from it. So,
you knew it. You knew it
got you
immediately.
straight away, right?
Absolutely. It was immediate response. So there's been
Exactly.
several times that I've had a Guinness poured over my head. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
those are those would be moments we can chat in the pub over. So, but Ian, it's been awesome having you on the episode. This has been, I think, for me, it's so important to raise this, and to get this message out, and to really start changing awareness to being something that people can consume, that people can relate to, and that people want to hear and enjoy hearing. So definitely keep up the amazing work, and I definitely think you well deserve the award, and I'm pretty sure if there more awards will come, especially around the community side, and your content is definitely making a difference.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate that. It means a lot.
So, so for everyone, this has been awesome having the vlogger of the year on the show today, and definitely we need to bring the fun back into cybersecurity. We need to entertain ourselves. We need to enjoy every day, because the most valuable thing in this world is time. It's our time, and the more value we use our time, the more we use it wisely, the more fulfilling your life is going to be. So let's make our industry a fun place to be. Let's make it the place where other people want to join in and be part of. So for everyone out there, again, this is a 401 Access Denied podcast. It comes out every 2 weeks. You subscribe, go back and listen to previous episodes, and definitely you get to hear more of awesome guests such as Ian. And I definitely look forward to hopefully catching up with you sooner than later. We'll definitely have a good time. Maybe to catch one of your stand-ups.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome. Thanks, everyone, and all the best. Take care. Goodbye.